Greetings, Inquisitor. I'm pleased you found this holocron. Today's information is going to be about an efficient method to relic your characters in Star Wars Galaxy of Heroes. I've done this on my main account a bunch of times, and I've done it a bunch of different ways. I've farmed everything at first, and that just took forever. I decided I was just going to buy what I needed with crystals and wailed on it, and that gets really expensive really fast to get relic characters. But now I've settled in on a process with 4 constant collecting steps and 1 step to finish out relics. That's what I'm going to share with you today. That's what this video is about. So stick around if you want to figure out how to make your relics go pretty quickly. And I did have success with my alt account, my Darth Loquitur account. If you haven't seen those videos, you can check them out. I go week by week and talk about all the progress. I got my first relic character around 600,000 galactic power, and I had no problem using this method to relic a character at that low of a level with that new of an account either. So let's get started. In order to have this conversation, I want to make sure that we're always talking on the same, talking from the same page. So the first thing I want to do is present my terminology, what we're looking at, and get an understanding of how it works to take a character to Gear 13 and build up their relic levels. So whenever I talk about the left side, I'm talking about the left side of the screen as you face it. I understand that if you're the character, that's the stuff on the right-hand side of the character. But for the purpose of this video, you see this material is shown on the left side of the character, and that's what I'm going to call the left side for the rest of the video. Every character that you relic is going to have the same pattern for the gear on these 3 parts. They're all going to take 30 pieces of some kind of gold legendary gear, and that gear is going to be farmed from the light side and dark side energy, and it's going to take 2 pieces of this epic purple gear, and each one of those pieces is going to take 20 shards of the gear. All of that purple gear is available out of the shard shop. We're going to talk about that here in a minute. But when I talk about gold gear, I'm talking about these pieces. When I'm talking about purple gear, you can see what I'm talking about from this screen. But that's a pattern on this side, and you're going to need light side, dark side, regular energy to farm up these pieces. Now that we have the Conquest game mode, that's also going to be a way to get access to these pieces. If we look at the right side, those pieces are more complicated. The top gives a representation of what those top 2 pieces look like. They often have 3 parts. You can see it's broken down into a part that takes 50 pieces of Mark 12, another part that takes 2 of 20 each of Mark 12, and that's all fleet energy farms. And then the third piece takes a combination of some common gear like the Mark IV Bacta-Gel in this case, plus 40 more of the purple gear that you can get from the shard shop. So that's kind of the layout for the top 2 pieces. And then the bottom piece you can see there, it has several different elements to it. And that's a mix of dark side, light side energy, and fleet energy. We've got Chirotechs in there, among other stuff. And that collector and injector is something that you're going to have to farm specifically for each character. That's the right side. In the anatomy of a relic amplifier, the higher you want to take the character and relic, the more of these gear pieces you need. At the left, you see their carbonite circuits. You're going to need a lot of those because every level that you use your relic amplifier, it's going to require some of those circuit boards. Bronzium wiring is next, then chromium, then iridium heat sinks, then electrium conductors, and finally zymbital cards. And there's one more piece that's Relic 8, but we're not going to talk about that for the purpose of this video. If you're high enough to be in a guild that's killing the challenge tier Rancor and getting Relic 8, you probably don't need the content that I'm presenting today. The bottom part of it is the signal data. And again, the easiest signal data over there on the left is for low-level relics. and then the incomplete signal data in the middle is what you need for the mid-tier, and then the stuff at the far right side is what you need for the higher level relics. So that is farmed out of the cantina or bought for crystals. And what I'm going to propose to you today is we're going to farm that out of the cantina. Okay, now that we understand what we're looking at the gear to take us to gear 13 and the materials to amplify our relic to whatever level we're going for. So the first step, and this is the most important step in my opinion, it's the thing that I'm probably going to talk about for the longest out of this whole video. The first step is you have to feed the scavenger. If you want to build relics, getting to gear 13 is one part of the challenge, but once you're at gear 13, you need to have enough materials to actually build the relic amplifier levels that you want. So we'll start at the lowest level and we'll talk about the carbonite circuit boards. So the first few characters you relic, you will have been playing the game for a while and you will have a big stockpile of really low level gear that you can feed to the scavenger and you won't have any problems getting this early on. The fact that you need this for every single relic level on every character that you ever relic means that over time you will deplete yourself of this material and sooner or later you're going to be looking for more carbonite circuits. If you look at the light side nodes on the lowest level, they have gear that breaks down for relic, and they have sometimes 4 or 5 pieces on the same node. My preferred node is 1E. On that node, there's 5 pieces that all break down for carbonite circuits. 3 of those parts have 100% drop rate. You will get 1 of them for every single sim that you do on that node, and 2 of them, I believe, are about 50%. So if you sim this node 20 times, you'll get 20, of 3 pieces, and then 20 between the other 2. So you'll get 80 pieces of gear for every 20 sims. So if you do a full energy refresh and spend the whole energy refresh on this node, it will cash in for about 14 of the completed circuits. So for one day, 3 refreshes, that puts you at like 41, 42 carbonite circuits. So if you need 100 of them, you can spend 2.5 days doing this if you really have to. But this is how you can get them without too much effort. Bronzium wiring is also easy at first. For me, this is the one that I have to search for the most because I don't have as efficient of a method for getting it. But if you look at the light side 7B normal, Chirotech shock prods are there. So again, you're going to be farming your characters through gear 10, 11, 12. And some of those characters are going to need Chirotechs somewhere. You're going to have to farm these shock prods or buy them out of a shop. I recommend that you never buy the Chirotech shock prod from a shop ever. Don't buy it. Use your currency for other things and always get your shock prods off of this node. While you're farming this node for your shock prods, you're also getting the Mark IV data pads, and those you can crunch up for Bronzium wiring. So it's a way that you can use your energy to get what you want. You already need it anyway, and you're getting the added benefit of feeding stuff to the scavenger for relics. Similarly, with Ugnaught, we talked before about the Boss 7 armor that comes on Ugnaught. There's videos out there. You can see all that. But it's less commonly known, I guess. I don't think people talk about it quite as much. But there's also a weapon mod on the same level for Ugnaught on gear tier 5. If you look on the upper right side, right beside his head in the picture over there, you can see it. That is a weapon mod. And that weapon mod crunches up 4 chromium transistors at the exact same rate as the BAW armor. And the piece that you need for that is a Mark III weapon mod. That's the one that you'll be short on when you're trying to make those weapon mods for Ugnaught. And if you go to light side 8F, that has those Mark III mods that you can farm, and that's a Carbonti node. Everybody needs Carbontis. You're going to need Carbontis at some point. When you need Carbantes, farm them off of light side 8F 100%. That gets you this Mark III weapon mod that you can convert into chromium transistors through Ugnaught. If you don't know how to do that, you can look at my gear video. I talk about how to put Ugnaught at gear 5 and keep him there. And all that same stuff is true for this, except you're going to use the weapon mod instead of the armor. For Erodium heat sinks, you really want to use the Mark III projectors only, completed. You want to make sure that you assemble those 20 parts into a completed piece, because the completed piece gives you a far better exchange rate at the Scavenger than the individual pieces. So if you're farming the Mark III projectors, you go to light side 9F. That's got bayonets on it, which are also part of Gear 13. And actually, if you get up all the way to Relic 8, those bayonets can be used for the part that you can break down for the Relic 8 stuff. But here's where you can get your Mark III projectors, and that also gives you Mark 8 bio. So again, you're probably building your characters up, and there's 2 parts to the Mark 8 bio. And whenever you need this, let's say, not the transparent part, but this like filled in part of the Mark 8 bio, you farm it off of this node. That also gets you the projectors, and those projectors can be converted into your Erodium heat sinks. Again, we're just using the game to farm the gear that we already need for something else to get the gear that we need for relics. That's how we're doing this. That's step 1, feeding the Scavenger. If you have leftover fleet energy, Fleet 1G normal also has the Mark III projectors, and that's a pretty good way to get more Mark III projectors to crunch up. I've also said before, if you don't mind spending crystals, you can spend 300 crystals for a completed Mark III projector, and that's not a bad value out of the shop if you're willing to spend the crystals. For the Electrium Conductors, we're going to go to dark side 9C normal. Again, there's a material here that we're going to look for all the time, the Mark IV Bactigels. You can get those out of several different shipments. We're not going to take those out of a shipment ever. We're not going to waste our currency in any of the stores ever buying this. Whenever we need Mark IV Bactigels, we are going to farm this node. This node's going to give us Mark XII Cybernetics. Those Mark XII Cybernetics are what we're going to use to get Electrium Conductors. And this is when you're going to Relic 5, 6, 7. You need these Electrium Conductors. So only at the highest levels, but once we get there, once we want to commit to taking a character that high, if you've just always farmed your Bactigels off of this node, you're going to have a bunch of extra cybernetic Mark XII Cybernetics that we're going to be able to make these conductors out of. So again, we're just going to look for the gear where it's going to give us double the benefit, the gear that we want plus gear for relics. Last step, Zinbittle cards. These Mark XII HoloLenses are needed a lot for Gear 13. So if you farm this node, you're going to say, well, I'm going to farm this node, but I'm going to use all of these holo lenses actually to get the relic level to the character in the first place. But you can actually over-farm this node. It's not a problem to farm a whole bunch of these. There's some other gear on the node as well, including a Mark VI hypo syringe. And especially early on in the game, like when you're starting out, if you're non-hyperdrive, as you're coming up, you need a lot of these Mark VI hypo syringes, 50 at a time on a lot of the characters at the mid-range, like Gear 8 and 9, I think, level. You need a lot of these. So whenever you need these Mark VI hypos, always farm them on this node and build up an inventory of these Mark XII HoloLenses. You're not going to regret that. Later on in the game, once you've got most of your characters past that and you're not short on these Mark VI hypos, then you farm this node in order to get that lens, in order to get your Zinbittle cards. But in the meantime, if you overstock on the Mark VI hypos later in the game, those do break down for Bronzium wiring. So this fleet node, you can just farm and get, let's say, 2 of the hardest pieces of relic material at the same node. So that's why in my gear video I said this is the best fleet node in the game, because you can just farm this node to your heart's content, and you can either use those materials to gear your character, or you can use those materials for very valuable relic pieces. All right, so to sum it up, step one, the most important thing I can say about step one, there's gear in the game that you're going to need anyway. Farm it off of the nodes that work to your advantage for making relics. I've made a summary of everything we talked about. The HoloLenses off of Fleet 3C, Cybernetics Dark Side 9C, Holo Projectors Light Side 9F, Ugnaught, the Mark 7 armor is fine. If you want to get the Mark 1 cuffs, I do Dark Side 3A hard. That's the range trooper node that gets you the Mark 1 stun cuffs, which are the, let's say, the bottleneck part for that Mark 7 armor for Ugnaught. And if you want to do the Mark 7 weapon mod, then that comes off of that Carbonti node on light side 8F. Bronzium wiring, Mark 5 data pad from light side 7B where you're farming your Chirotech. And Carbonite, light side 1E, 1F, both of those have 5 each with high drop rate, and 3 of them that are, full 100% drop rate. 1D is also okay. That node has a little bit lower drop rate, but if you need something off of that node, that's fine. You can farm that too. So that's the summary for step one. Now let's move on to step two. This is a much easier step. This is the one where we just sit back and we let it come to us. Over time, you're going to get materials from raids, guild events, galactic challenges. Now with the new conquest boxes, we're going to be able to get some parts out of there. Territory battles, territory wars, what have you. All of this stuff is going to give you little bits and pieces of what you need. The reason why I put it in here as a step, even though it's not taking you, let's say, any direct effort, you have to realize that that gear is coming in at some certain rate, and that's helping you. And if you say, well, I want to relic 4 characters this month, you're only going to get the same amount of gear that you were ever going to get. And the amount of gear will help you pretty easily relic 1 character a month, maybe 2. But once you start pushing it past that, you have to make up all of the extra relic gear that you want. And that's why, when people ask me, I always say, think about like a relic every 3 weeks is a really good pace. That's burning it up, right? That's about as fast as you can relic if you just let stuff come to you. If you want to force it, you can go faster. If you want to sit back and do other things while you're building relics, it might take you 4 or 5 weeks to relic a character. That's okay too. The moral of the story is just understand this is coming in at a certain rate. And the faster that you want to relic more characters and get them to gear 13, the harder it's going to be for any additional characters where you're not patient enough to wait. When we're talking about this, it's always important to say you get more of these pieces if you participate in all of the events. So really, don't miss your signups. You got to be in the raids. You got to be in the guild events. If you're in a raid, do damage. Get in there and do something. Make sure that you get on the damage charts that gets you higher placement and gets you better loot. And then last, I will say, the Chirotech computer from the championship store, that's another one of these let it rain things, because you're playing Grand Arena, you're getting some of that currency. And if you open up the championship store, you can see here at the bottom in the second row on the right-hand side, they offer the Chirotech battle computer there for the championship store. And I've said it before, I'll say it again in this video, I literally spend almost all of my championship store currency on those Chirotech battle computers. And you can see on my main account, I've got 378 of them. I'm still buying them. You use these 100 at a time for a lot of stuff, and they go fast. And I feel good about it. I feel like that's a good place to spend your championship store currency. And if you ever do get to the point where you feel like you have plenty of computers, of course, you can use it somewhere else. But that's another way to let that particular type of gear come to you instead of having to go find it and farm it. Or buy it out of a different shop for different currency. Step 3, this is the shard shop. And again, this is the third row down. these two pieces of purple gear that you see here to the left of the pulse modulator. Those are those purple pieces that we saw on the opening screens when I went through the anatomy of a relic. Those two slots are the gear that you need for the epic gear for your relics. So if you come into this shop, you pretty much want to be buying as much of this stuff as you can. Now, we know that it takes stuff 40 at a time. So while you're early game and you're limited on this shard shop currency, when you get to 40, for most of the pieces, you can stop. But for some of these pieces, you don't stop at 40. You just keep constantly accumulating them. So for me, the three that I will buy as many of as I can ever afford: scanners, med packs, and detonators. So the scanners and the med packs can be used on the right side with that relic gear, and they can also be included in the stuff on the left-hand side with the gear that's heavily farmed from fleet. They still show up over there. And I've seen it before where, one character will need 120 med packs or 120 of those scanners because they'll need 3 different instances of 40 each. So you need a lot of those. You got to buy those every time they show up in the shop. Even if I have an inventory of 96 of them, I'm still going to buy them. And the detonators, that's for a little bit different reason. So we talked about using the Mark 12 cybernetics in order to get Electrium conductors. So let's say we've bought too many of the detonators and we have a stockpile of those, and we're farming that node that gives us the Mark 12 cybernetics, and we've got extras of those. We can actually combine those up into a full piece, and that full piece gives 1,050 in the credits for the Electrium Conductor. And you can see I put it into the store here in the Scavenger, and that 1050 only gets me 13 pieces. This particular piece, the Electrium Conductor, has just a really terrible conversion rate. So if you have to just farm your cybernetics solely to get these conductors, it's going to take you a while. You'll farm a lot of back to gel while you're doing it. But if you get some spare detonators, you can combine them up and get an even better value. Now, the exchange rate is 15 per cybernetic, and it also, since you use 40 of the detonators, it's also a conversion rate of 15 per each detonator shard that you use. So it's not that the conversion rate gets any better using the detonators. It's just that once you get some extra of them, you can convert them and take away a little bit of the need for you to keep farming those cybernetics. And remember, this is just for the highest level of relics, so that's for the characters that you really want to take to Relic 7. All right, collecting the signal data out of the cantina. So one way to do it is to figure out how much you need for the particular character that you're working on, and then just go farm that. For me, I do it a little bit differently. So for example, Relic 3, if you're going to Relic 3, you only need 35 fragmented, which is the maze-looking piece, and 15 of the incomplete, which is the sonar-looking thing in the middle. So if you want to go to Relic 3, you really don't need much signal data. For each level above that, going to 4 and 5 takes quite a bit of signal data, and then 6 and 7 is really a big commitment on signal data. So again, you can look up what it costs and you can farm exactly what it needs to go where you want to go. Or if you look at this strip up top, that's my actual inventory right now from my main account. And I try to have about 250 of the fragmented and 150 each of the other kinds. And then, I've got kind of a bank account, and I can relic whoever I want pretty much to whatever I want. And then I just have to restock it over time. So that's a way to do it. So however you feel more comfortable doing it, either farm it up to what you need or just make a bank. And then when your bank is full, you go back to farming Cantina characters. If you want to build a bunch of high relic characters, it severely limits your ability to farm characters out of the Cantina. So if you say, well, I'm going to do some Relic 7 characters, like Jedi Knight Anakin. I need him to be huge. I need him to be Relic 7. Well, that can make sense. Take him to Relic 7. But then work on another character that you're comfortable leaving at Relic 3. Maybe you've got a trooper team and you've got to get Veers, Piet, and Stark to Relic 3 for the Sith Eternal Emperor. Okay, get one of those characters, take him to Relic 3. Or just take a character and put it on Relic 1 and come back to it later. You don't have to take all of your Relic characters all the way up to Relic 7. So that's a way to manage your Cantina currency. But this is, to my opinion, this is a continuous collection thing. You don't want to wait until you get a character relicked and then try to go to the Cantina and farm up your materials. You want to be farming those already at the same time that you're working on the character, so that once you get Gear 13, you can just work on the relic right away. And then step 5, the 5th step, is just completion, right? That's where you've got some of this gear built up. You've got it coming in from the raids. You've been working on the right nodes to build up gear in your account. Now you've got a character that you want to get all the way to Gear 13 and get that Relic Amplifier going. So when should you commit? And the answer is anytime. If you just got a character to Gear 12 and you just relicked a character yesterday, you can still start on your next relic. You just have to realize that if you're kind of doing it efficiently and waiting for the stuff that comes out of the game and buying things out of the shard shop, it takes about 3 weeks. So if you've got none of the parts, you're going to have to allow 3 or 4 weeks for those to fill in and be patient. If you've got about a third of the gear already built, already filled in, then you should spend about 2 weeks getting the rest of the pieces. So if you can do that and in your mind set kind of a reasonable timeline for when you close out the relic, then you don't mind starting at any time. It's not a project that you have to wait till next year to do. You just say, okay, for the next 3 weeks, I'm working on this relic. Week 1, I'm going to farm the gear that I need to fill in. Week 2, I'm going to farm the gear I need to fill in. Week 3, I'll probably have all the gear I need farmed up, and I'll just be waiting on the rest of these little pieces I'm buying out of the shard shop, and then you get your relic. So that's what I would say. Resist the temptation to go in there and start farming those med packs and stuff that you can buy out of the shard shop, because if you spend your energy there, it's kind of a waste, because you could have taken that energy and gone back to farming Carbantes, back to farming Chirotechs, back to gels, the things that you need. That's also setting you up for your next relic level character. So that's my opinion. The especially those pieces that you buy out of the shard shop, only ever buy them out of the shard shop. They also come out of the guild event store, and I made the mistake on my main account. I thought, well, I'll get this stuff out of the guild event store later. I just want to push these relics as fast as I can. I wanted to get my Supreme Leader Kylo Ren. So I burnt through a whole bunch of my guild event token currency for about 3 months, relicking all my characters for SLKR. And that's a mistake. It's a regret. If I could go back and do it over again, it probably would have taken me another 3 weeks to a month to get my Galactic Legend. But I would have saved, 3 or 4 months worth of guild event tokens that I have to rebuild now. So don't do that. If you know what you're doing, you're an experienced player, and you want to use those guild event tokens for that stuff, that's fine. But just understand what you're giving up. And having done it myself, I look back and I'm saying it's a bad idea. All right. So other things, just points for awareness, things that I believe to be facts. That left side is usually easier, and it's usually done before the right side. I don't start working on my next character on the right side of their gear. I work on one relic at a time, and once that left side is done, for example, and I've got all the stuff that I needed, then I'm definitely going to use my regular energy to go back to farming Carbantes and back to gel and things like that. I'm not going to continue to work on relic for another character yet. I'm going to farm all the fleet stuff out, let that catch up, close out the relic on that character. Meanwhile, I'm letting more gear fill in from raids and from loot chests, which means that the next character I pick to relic is going to be further along toward getting that relic locked in. And crystals, I mean, if you're impatient, it's not a good deal to spend crystals to get the gear for the Gear 13, but I do understand that sometimes you're going to just want to lock in that last piece and finish out your relic and spend crystals. So if you're a person who's willing to spend crystals for that, then do it. But the most efficient way, of course, is to use the crystals for energy refreshes and get that stuff out of farming, even to the extent that if you've got a few crystals to burn, buy the Mark III holo projectors so that you don't have to farm those, and then, keep doing your energy refreshes. All right, last words. This method does make a relic about every 3 weeks or so, depending on your raid loot. It does not get you to a galactic legend faster as such, but it is a way that you can free up your energy and crystals so that you can keep on working on other characters. So while you're working on relics, like I said, you do finish out your regular energy stuff faster, or at least I do routinely, and that allows me to go back to farming the gear that I need to get more characters to Gear 12. So just to put it in a summary, the preparation steps that we're doing all the time, we're using the nodes that we farm in a way that supports relics. We're collecting gear from raids, guild events, conquest, and such. We're constantly using the shard shop for those purple pieces to take us from Gear 12 to Gear 13. We're going to build up a bank of signal data from the cantina so that we can always relic characters when we want to. And then whenever we're ready for that final step, finish it out, do the execution, farm your injector, any chirotech that you have to farm, any gold parts that you have to farm. And remember to save back some credits, because especially if you want to go to Relic 7, you do have to put a pretty good sized bundle of credits into those level ups as well. So that's it. That's the method. That's how you relic a character with efficiency. That's the summary of the best ways that I've found to set yourself up for success. Hope you like this video. Please, Inquisitors, take out your lightsabers, cut that like button in half, smash it, force crush it, destroy it, whatever you got to do. That helps me make more holocrons, so crush the like button. Please subscribe to my channel, share it with other people if you think they'll benefit from this information. Join us over on the Discord. We got a very active and fun community over there on Discord, a lot of good people talking about a lot of good topics and helping out anybody, everybody, new players, experienced players. Come over there if you want to join our community. Thank you all for your time. See you in the next Holocron.